We are here with Robert Carlson at the Scottsdale Tasting Room of Carlson Creek, one of 2 or 3 different tasting rooms.
One of 3 different tasting rooms, and the second one we started. We're going to close the first one later this year and open up the 4th one at the winery on site of the vineyard, 100 feet away from our Sauvignon Blanc vines.
So which ones will be around? There'll be this one. Is the Cottonwood the one that's getting shut down?
No, it's the original Willcox tasting room because it's too small.
Interesting.
When we opened it, oh man, that would be almost 12 years ago. There was only 17 wineries in the state, so there wasn't as much interest as there is now, and it's just not big enough. Mm-hmm. So it fills up with a couple of groups, and then people just walk in, see it's full, and they leave. So
and that one's right in town,
downtown,
right, Main Street,
right in downtown. So we'd be moving it out to the vineyard. We're waiting till after harvest. We want to make sure we get all the roads fixed up so everyone can drive in, because it's about a half a mile into our vineyard. And we want to get all the landscaping in, because we're going to start doing events out on the vent lawn and allow people to be in the vineyard. And
Nice.
It's right in our winemaking facility, so you not only have the windows looking out into the vineyard, which I said is like 100 feet away, but on the other side of the tasting room, it's all windows looking into the winery.
Wow. So an immersive experience.
Immersive experience. We have a kitchen on site. Once the kitchen's up and running, we'll be able to do demo events and be able to host weddings where we cater on site, and it'll be very, enjoyable.
It sounds wonderful. I can't wait to go down and visit.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you didn't recognize the other voice or face on this episode, of course, it wouldn't be a visit to a local winery without you, Christina.
I do like my wine.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, one of our writers in A Taste of AZ magazine several times over at this point, and in the first issue, you wrote all about an introduction to Arizona wine. So it's always fun sitting down with you and getting your perspective on things and kind of helping me along my way as I learn more and more about wine, especially in Arizona.
Well, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So as you were kind of breaking down, you have a few different spots all over the valley. Where is it exactly that you produce your grapes for your wines?
Willcox, so southeast corner of the state. From where we're sitting, it's about 3 hours door to door to the winery. We're actually in harvest right now. I'm wearing my blue suit because it's Saturday, but for the last week we've been doing about 16-hour days at the winery.
You're wearing a blue suit because all of your working clothes are dirty right now, right?
Yes, exactly. I leave all those in Willcox, and I just make my transition back up here. But it's at 4,300 feet, so the elevation is much more similar to, say, Chile or Argentina that is than California, Washington, or Oregon. So we have a completely unique growing region, which allows us to have better skins. We got more UV radiation, more color comes out of them because of the cooler nights, because we get a big diurnal swing. So the temperatures get up, to the 80s. Like when I left yesterday, it was 86 degrees in Willcox.
Wow.
Which is kind of nice in August in Arizona.
Absolutely.
And then
Better
it'll
than
get
like 100
down
degrees up here.
Yeah, it'll get down to the 50s at night. I mean, right now it gets down to the 60s, and we're gonna have some bunch of monsoons hit in a few days. But that big swing allows the grapes to maintain their acidity, and just like lemonade, it's the acidity in a wine that makes it refreshing. So that's one of the really important things. Now, you can do that other ways. Our elevation and our distance from the equator does that. In California, say it's your proximity to the coast, or mists that come in if you say are in Santa Barbara. It's both factors. So it's a good terroir, as they say.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's one of the most interesting things about local food and beverage is how tied it is to the agricultural component of the business, which is there's a lot of variation whenever it comes to any different type of agriculture. And so I think Arizona, a lot of people get surprised when they hear about the different regions like down in Willcox and what the geography is like, and the fact that can produce great wines. And I think, obviously over the past several years that has become more known and understood, but you've, I'm sure, seen firsthand what it takes to educate people as to what Arizona wine truly is.
Oh, you go back 13 years when we started this company, and the conversation was always Arizona. Like, I didn't know we grew grapes in Arizona, and we've gotten to the point where we no longer have to do that initial education.
You don't get as many confused looks.
You don't get as many
anymore,
confused
right?
looks. People know that Willcox exists. They don't always know exactly where it is, but they know that most of the grapes in the state come from there.
I think too that they don't realize the elevation. Like,
Yeah.
Well, when you drive to Willcox, it is so gradual that you don't even notice that you're up there. But we get snow in the wintertime. Make a little snowman in the vineyard, for the day or two that it lasts.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's very unique. I mean, and every Arizona wine region has a different terroir. I mean, I like the spiciness of the grapes that come from the Verde Valley, and they have their own challenges, totally separate than us. And then Arizona's oldest AVA, Sonoyta, has a very unique characteristics. They also have a lot more to contend with than we do. They keep having weather events, but it's like they can produce such interesting concentrated wines, like stuff that Anne Roncone grows over at Lightning Ridge. I really like her Italian
Big
varietals.
fan, yes.
Oh yeah. So, and it's the same thing with all the other foods in the state. Like I last weekend, we just had a meeting with Mafam from Mingling Grays down in Chandler. She's my favorite cheesemonger in the state, and we're collaborating on
That's
doing.
a gem. Her spot.
Oh, it's amazing. If you've never gone in there, she knows her cheeses, and
This is where again?
It's downtown Chandler.
Mingling Grays was the name?
Mingling Grays.
Okay. That's a good name.
Yep.
Oh yeah, no, she.
A great topic for a future issue.
It
I
is
like
actually
I like it.
because when she started out, she was doing grazing tables, so she did all of our cheese plates and all of our events here at the tasting room
Oh,
before
that's
she had a
awesome.
spot.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, well, her and I know each other for a very long time, and so we're doing an event. Well, it's going to be an ongoing event here where we're partnering with Experience Scottsdale to create a wine and cheese experience, where there'll be a curated pairings between our most high-end wines and some wines that you can't get anywhere else, and local and international cheeses. And conversations with her about how terroir affects cheese is insane.
When is that going on?
That's going to be going on late this year.
I'm
There'll
glad
be
we're recording so
Yes.
I can
Yeah,
make sure to
there'll be,
remember this.
That's a brilliant idea because it will educate people too at the same time on, not just the wine and the cheese, but how well terroir goes together.
and that's the entire focus is the terroir. That when we were talking about the idea originally, I was like, oh, this will be cool. And then when we brought wines over to Mingling Grays, and her and I and my fiance Brittany, who's sitting behind us, and her husband all sat down, and we spent 2 hours just tasting cheese and trying wines with it and going, this is incredible. All these
Sounds
things.
like the best day ever.
Oh, it was so much
That's what I'm
fun.
thinking. Who wouldn't want to do that?
Yeah, we had a great time. So yeah.
And so, your place up in Cottonwood, that's an interesting one because you don't grow grapes up there, but you have a tasting room in one of the most known wine producing areas of the state.
Yeah, well, I actually got my start up there.
Okay.
We were a homeless winery basically for a number of years, working directly out of Custom Crush. Our first couple of vintages were made up at Page Springs.
Okay.
And Eric was kind enough to take me on as an intern while he was helping make our wine. So I was working in the cellar while we were working on our initial offerings, and I think it was 250 cases, not really commercially viable at that point. I mean, like the dry Riesling I'm drinking right now, which is a very limited release, that's how much of this we make a year. So
Okay.
it's very small compared to, the other wines we make. Like the sweet Riesling, we make 4 or 5 times that. And I used to crash in his loft, sleeping at his place when we were doing that. So Verde Valley always has a special place in my heart, and that's where all my original winemaking friends are. But it was just kind of a place we felt like we needed to be. The city had talked to us about opportunities there because they knew we were looking to open up another location, and it was very serendipitous. Just one day, he's like, well, there's a space opening up. One of the other tasting rooms is closing down. And we went in and we gutted the place completely and rebuilt it all out.
Wow.
And the manager up there, Michelle, she actually moved up there. She's trained through Yavapai College, and I really look forward to seeing what she does in the future. Because I'm noticing something about Arizona is there's a lot more egalitarianism when it comes to the winemaking. You have a lot more female winemakers in the state, and I think they seem to take more chances. I don't know if it's the women have better palates, but
Could be.
But she's looking to do something in the future, and I mean, you just look around the industry, and there's a lot more people taking chances.
Mm-hmm.
And
I like that you have everybody that works there. Michelle, I knew her before she moved because I met her through the wine industry.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody else I've met there all have been graduates of Yavapai, which
College,
I appreciate.
Yeah. And so we're very supportive of Yavapai College. It is an amazing resource for this state. Michael Pierce over there, who's running the program, he is an excellent winemaker. If anybody gets a chance to try Bodega Pierce wines, there's some wines that I'm very jealous of there, and their vineyards are right across the street from us. Like,
Oh, really?
I every morning drive past their vineyards, so I mean, it's a distance of the length of a road and the unplanted portions of our properties to our vines.
Wow.
So, and their vineyard's actually older. They revitalized an older vineyard that existed.
And
It
so,
was it Crop Circle they
Crop
had?
Circle. It was Crop Circle.
how long has the Willcox area been producing wines?
80s.
Okay.
It would have been, Al Buell was one of the pioneers of the region. Sam Pillsbury was very early on. In partners in the old Dos Cabezas vineyard. Bob Webb.
That's right.
Bob Webb was
I think
very
he
influential.
opened one of the very first wineries
Very,
in
very
the
first,
state
exactly.
after the Prohibition shut down.
Yeah, exactly. And then, and we've got Dick Erath, one of the pioneers of the Oregon Pinot movement. After he sold his brand off to Chateau Ste. Michelle, opened up Cimarron Vineyards down there, which is now owned by Todd Bostock at Dos Cabezas. At least I believe.
I think so.
Yeah, he does. Because I know Juan Alp runs it. And that's another one just right down the street. A lot of Spanish varietals, I believe. Amazing grapes there. And so it's been a very, it's very kind of pioneer spirit down there. And we're usually the last wine region that gets visited. Sonoyta is more established, closer to Tucson. The Verde Valley is right south of Sedona. Beautiful views. They've got all the creeks and rivers. If you get a chance, go ahead and kayak down the river and stop at Alcantara. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
But Willcox is farming. I mean, there's a reason 75 to 80% of the grapes in the state are grown there. I mean, we're surrounded by agriculture, corn, cotton, beans, all sorts of nut trees, and a lot of cattle. And there's a lot of infrastructure in that environment that allows us to grow really well and expand.
And I think your area produces the majority of grapes of the whole state.
It does. So, I mean, we kind of joke that if you go into a wine tasting room anywhere in the state, 3 out of 4, chances are you're drinking Willcox grapes. I've said that totally wrong, but you get the idea.
Yeah. And so, what was the first area in Arizona to start producing wine?
It would have been Sonoyta.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was actually Sonoyta Winery, if I recall.
Or the first major. I mean, there were people who were growing wines, but nobody enough grapes, but not enough to, be a business.
Well,
considered
Professor
a winery.
Kilby, down at University of Arizona, he helped us do our soil stamps, but the University of Arizona has been very involved in the wine industry from the get-go. There is a wine cellar on the extension campus of the University of Arizona with wines that are older than a number of the people in this tasting room, definitely all my employees.
Yeah.
And they've, pre-pandemic, they were looking to convert it into more of an Arizona wine thing, and COVID kind of put a damper on that. But Shane Burgess, the dean over there, has been amazingly supportive of the wine industry. I mean, I think the really cool thing about Arizona is that for a fairly large state, it's kind of a small state, and there's a lot of support with the industry. When you talk about the restaurant industry, everyone knows each other. And the same thing with the wine industry, and there's a lot of crossover there where we're all very supportive of each other.
And I think that's one of the things that has been a theme throughout probably every single podcast we've
Right.
done at this point. But it's like, it's the kind of thing that you almost have to keep repeating because it's so unique and so special. And for consumers that get more and more of an understanding of the industry side of it and see those parallels, you were talking about the grazing boards that you were sourcing and having built locally, and using that as a lens to kind of enjoy food more, but food with a story. I think that is one of the things that is just so awesome about Arizona food and beverage. And so I'm curious for you, what is your perspective on the collaboration and kind of the community behind Arizona food and beverage?
Well, I mean, my I guess I can encapsulate it in a story. I've done a lot of work with the Office of Tourism, especially earlier on, and Chef Jeremy Pachenko.
Yep.
With him and I met on a few things, but we ended up in New York doing a dinner promoting Arizona, and everything on the table came from our state. And Hayden Flour Mill, Queen Creek Olive Mill, just down the board. What's the goat cheese producer?
Crow's Dairy.
Crow's Dairy. And that he was able to put together this fantastic meal, and he's 5th generation Arizonan, and he's doing all this cool stuff, and there's all these, New York influencers and reporters and writers at this big table, and all I get to do is just sit there and go, and here's my wine. I made this years ago, and it was this great thing. And it's the fact that not only do we see value in what other people are doing, but we like to promote it and share in it. Like Perry Rea over at Queen Creek Olive Mill, like he's taken me into his home and cooked for me there. Wow. And if you ever get a chance to eat his home, him and Brenda do this amazing spread where you will eat from noon to midnight, and everything is handmade there while you're there. So you bring a lot of wine, and his family's awesome. It's like my favorite family in Arizona, and the olive mill is just sick. And we use their products in our foods.
They have such
here.
a range, and their shop down in Queen Creek has obviously Arizona wine, but everything from Arizona produced soaps and jams and jellies, and it's
but when it
one-stop shopping fest.
When it comes to food, it's like you can go to one of these restaurants and they can say, we source everything within this circle. And you can have a world-class experience from somebody who's actually passionate about it. And I found out about some of these places while I was at another restaurant. And it's far more, I think, supportive than I've heard of in other regions. Down in Tucson, my favorite restaurant down there, Contigo, you go and sit at the bar and you will see people who work at other restaurants and cook at other restaurants there eating, because it's not a competition. They realize that you build each other up.
Absolutely.
And I think that's important to maintaining a thriving industry, because it enriches all of our lives.
Absolutely. And I think it just makes so much more of an awesome community to work inside of, no matter whether you're behind the bar or you're working on the production of wine or local grain or whatever it may be. When you get to go into another local restaurant and see your product being represented there, or even if you have the experience where, I'm sure you've had this before, you go into a restaurant and you see one of the people working at this restaurant that's not directly related to you, but they have your wine on and they're explaining it with passion to someone. That's like one of the coolest things that can happen, I imagine, as a producer of something in this industry.
My parents, who are part owners, every member of my family is an owner in the winery. My brother and I run the company mainly, and our parents are involved. But we walk into a restaurant and sit down. This is, 2019. Oh, it's actually Tarbell's.
Oh, one of our favorites.
He's come up in every single episode at this point. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, we had a SOM group here. Oh, sorry. I'll finish the story. We sit down, and it's like, oh yeah, I've been meaning to bring you here a while. And he looks, we're on this list. It's like, really? Didn't even know.
Oh, that's exciting.
Didn't even know. I was like, oh, there's a rule of 3. There's the back when the Chenin Blanc, we still had it. And unfortunately, those grapes are now extinct.
I love your Chenin Blanc. I hoarded that last bottle because the vineyard was no more.
The vineyard we sourced it from was in Fort Bowie, and they ripped it out. But yeah, we used to run a SOM group. We pay for our employees to get wine certifications. They have to pass the test, but we'll pay for it. And they was kind of subsumed into their SOM group. So like a lot of our guys graduated up into it, and then they were, after we closed down the group, everyone moved over there, and then COVID. So I definitely enjoy that kind of little things.
And so, going back to, you said you established the vineyard 13 years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
So going back then, how different were things? I imagine you didn't know exactly what you were getting into, huh?
Little backstory on that. 2008 count back 13 years. I was working as a stockbroker at Charles Schwab. So I had my 7, my 63, was registered representative, so I was front line. I had, wasn't... Charles Schwab is a wonderful company, but it's, I didn't finance this through trading stock. I was, And 2008, what was going on? Everyone was panicking and losing their life savings. Yeah. And I was, not to give my age, I was 27. And I didn't want to die of a heart attack.
Yeah.
Because it was very stressful, and it was a lot of people can thrive in that world. A lot of friends I still have there. But decided to try this idea that I've been hearing about, because they just a few years prior basically deregulated the wine industry here, allowing for the modern farm winery license, which allows for self-distribution, allows us to have tasting rooms, it allows us to serve wine by the glass, all the things that have allowed the industry to thrive.
And you were a wine enthusiast
I was,
at that point, because I think I remember you saying you had been to a party where Page Spring, where Eric had spoke.
I met Eric at a wine club private tasting event for a friend of mine who was hosting it, and liked Eric, still like Eric, love his wines. I really miss his Cab Pfeffer.
I never had that.
Oh, it was so spicy. I mean, it's had white pepper. In college, all my friends worked at Hacienda del Sol down in Tucson. A lot of them. And so I was introduced to wine through them. The sommelier Christoph there I would wait for everyone to get off work, because I believe I was working in an office at that time. I had a bunch of internships and career paths that never obviously panned out. But he used to walk up, put a glass of wine in front of me, and then just walk away. And then he'd come back 15 minutes later, and we just have a discussion. He said, well, what do you think about that? I just got it in. And we'd have a conversation. It was kind of my first real introduction. I mean, my best man at my upcoming wedding, this is a placeholder ring. This is for me to practice.
Okay.
It's also so I don't. My fiance, who's behind me, who's not listening, brought me a rubber ring so I could wear it around equipment. And now I'm trying to decide if that works, and it does.
Okay.
Because just want me to get it crushed and lose a finger. Mm-hmm. I recommend anybody who works around hard equipment, heavy equipment, to get a rubber ring.
Oh, good idea.
Anyway, so. Best man at my wedding was one of the big influences in introducing him, but my father was interested in it and everything, but we really kind of got into the nitty-gritty of learning about it. And then after college, stayed enthusiastic, and then when the opportunity presented itself, kind of just threw myself into it. I mean, I didn't have a lot of debt, didn't have a wife or children, kind of seemed like an opportune time, kind of if not now, then when, and the industry was nascent at the time, and it had been around for a while, but it had not gained the traction that it has today. There was 15, 16 wineries in the state. I think we're number 17. And it was a lot of people who were very passionate about it, but didn't have a lot of scale. There wasn't. I mean, we still are working towards that breakout hero brand that is nationally recognized, and that I might have a lot of gray hair by the time that happens. But but it was very oh, about Arizona wine? Oh, you're so cool. Like I felt very hipster.
Yeah, well, and not only were you a wine enthusiast long ago, but to have it sounds like the beginnings of that passion started partially through the lens of Arizona wine.
It did. I don't think I learned about wine really until I had enjoyed Arizona wine, because you find this thing that you like, and that you're very interested in, and you want to pursue it in a global context. So you go, okay, I have Riesling in my glass. What does Riesling taste like around the planet? Oh, well, they grow Riesling in Australia, Austria. The two opposite sides of the world. And they sound similar, and if you're typing, sometimes you write the wrong one.
Yeah.
But they produce completely different Rieslings. And it's very interesting because it comes back to that terroir, about that sense of place, which I originally thought was just a French marketing tactic to sell wine. Like, well, you can't grow this. This is just here because of the terroir. But it turns out it's really just like you can, like our Cabernet Sauvignon that you're drinking. You can genetically, the grapes that are in that glass are from vines that are genetically the same as that are grown in Napa and in Bordeaux. And all three of them will be absolutely different. And
I think the reason you first planted Riesling was because you had tried a Riesling at a neighboring vineyard in Willcox.
Albule Memorial Vineyard,
and you were impressed.
Which was the old Dos Cabezas vineyard back then. Because I thought Arizona, Riesling, it's German, and tried it, and I was just like, how is that so incredibly complex? And it was actually one of the ones Todd Bostock made. It was actually before he had purchased the brand. So it was one of the
when
older,
he was working it.
He brought it out, and we tried it, and it was incredible. So I mean, he's a great winemaker. I'm not surprised.
But I love that, so because of that, you plant a Riesling. And are there any grapes that you've added to your vineyard since then that have surprised you?
Malbec. I think Malbec is one of the future grapes for Arizona.
And why is that?
Well, it's easy to grow. It's we have a similar elevation and distance from the equator and similar soil to parts of Argentina and Chile, and we grow about 7 acres of Malbec, and it is a consistent producer, never gets rot or mold. It's very easy to train, and it produces just delicious wine. So we end up with this, nationally known grape varietal that grows really well in Arizona, isn't widely planted in the rest of the country. I mean, it's kind of did I name 3 things? Because I think it might be a trifecta.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's funny I say that, and none of the wines on the table are Malbec, but
there's still time.
There's still time.
Definitely.
We just wave. But I think that's a big one. Malvacia Bianca has been very popular around the state. I love growing it. It's so floral. The Rhone varietals I've had a lot of success with.
And it's so distinctive, I feel like, Malvacia Bianca.
Imagine if you took Sauvignon Blanc and made it more floral. So
the minute you lift it up to your nose.
Hits you in the nose. I mean, it's an excellent grape, and we do it all in stainless steel, and it's just enjoyable. It's pleasant. It's great for summertime.
Well, that's one of the things about wine that I like to look at it through the lens of Arizona wine as well, because there's so much wine out there, right? And when you have beer, you have such a diversity of flavors that wine obviously does as well, but it's a little bit harder to pick them apart. Whereas if you take something like a Kilt Lifter and then something just like a super hoppy IPA, those almost don't even taste like they're in the same category of drinks. And so for me personally, as I'm, beginning and going through the early stages of my personal wine journey, if you can call it that, looking at through an Arizona lens kind of allows me to dial back and make it a little bit more palatable, if you will, to understand what exactly I'm drinking, especially through the lens of different geography in Arizona, that I can go and travel there and experience, the change in elevation and things like that. What international wines, whether it be styles or specific ones, get you excited, and maybe have you drawn some inspiration from?
Well, there's a few. I'm going to leave the United States. I really like, say, Chenin Blanc from South Africa. I think it just has a very, called Steen or Stein, very, very unique characteristics down there. And they're having a lot of trouble right now because of COVID again. But that's it's a clean style that allows for a lot of flavor, which I think is very similar to how we try to do it in Arizona. Because I find a lot of white wines, that especially stuff that gets imported, often tastes, I wouldn't call it bland, but I would call it, not as, upfront. For the things that I really like, I like Rioja. Especially you get up into Basque Country, and the Tempranillos coming out of there are just, they're complex, and you find there's just something old yet new about it. It's like there's something in the back of my brain that's is like triggered by it, some ancestor that I don't know I had got really hammered there once, and the hangover lasted for generations. Argentinian Cab Francs, you don't see a lot of them in the United States, but you go down there and the winemakers are so proud of their Cab Francs. They mostly send us Malbec, but their Cab Francs are 100 points and they'll cost you $40.
Wow.
I financed an entire trip on the savings I bought buying Cab Francs down there once. And we have Arizona winemakers down there. Brennan Firth, he makes some excellent wines down there in Argentina, Mendoza. And then to round it out, I really like sparkling wines made from outside of Champagne in France, because you can get amazing quality for basically Champagne quality for cheap. So, especially you go to Alsace, you buy, it's called Cremant. So it's Champagne method, but made just outside. And Alsace is like, a nothing drive from Champagne, and obviously the food in Alsace is awesome. So if you're gonna get Cremant, go ahead and get Alsatian Cremant or stuff from Bourgogne, and you can get that anywhere in the valley, or you can go to AJ's. Sponsored.
Do you think
by.
you'll ever make a sparkling?
I'd love to. It's something I would have loved to do before my wedding. But we have the ability. I really like to do like a sparkling Riesling.
Oh, that would be super
like a
interesting.
sect, we grow a couple different varietals of Chardonnay, clones of Chardonnay. So it's a definite possibility in the next year or two. My brother, John Carlson, is very interested in launching a sparkling brand for us. But it's a matter of we're selling out of wine. To start that new, line of wines, you kind of have to have more grapes, or say, well, we'll just make less straight Chardonnay, and when we release it, it doesn't last more than 4 or 5 months. And we doubled or tripled production on it this year, so hopefully it'll last longer.
And I think, touching on that, you're actually, I know you used to supply grapes to a lot of other vineyards, but I think you're pulling back on that to double your own production?
We did. One of the goals this year was doubling production, and as many of you know, we've been in a drought for a couple of years. So I sold to 10 or so different wineries across the state, and we've dialed that back to, mainly 3, though we did a small sale to one other winery. So call it 4 wineries that we sell grapes to this year, and only 3 of those have long-term contracts with us. And we love partnering with them. We love seeing what they produce. They're all great winemakers, and we drink their wines. But we'll see what the future holds, and we need to plant more. I mean, the entire state needs to plant more. If anybody's listening to this podcast and you'd like to become a grape farmer, please plant grapes. And if you could maybe plant more than 20 or 40 acres, that'd be amazing, and I will sign a long-term contract.
You heard it.
Yeah, that's a pretty good pitch to anyone out there that's looking to get into that kind of thing. So I want to circle back to your wines, and I don't know if this is possible because it seems like in the last 5 minutes the place filled out substantially more than it was before.
Oh, there are no more tables available.
Which is a good thing to have, of course, obviously.
And the
but
bar is full. So.
If we could try the Malbec, I think, and get your thoughts on that specifically and kind of have you break it down for us.
See if I can...
And in the meantime, if you have not been to this Old Town Scottsdale location before, we're surrounded by a lot of great food and beverage. I think a couple doors down is Blue Clover Distillery, which we recently recorded a podcast with. And
I'm actually judging their Hatch Chili cocktail competition.
Yeah, which I mean, that is something that I have not personally experienced before, but it is now on my bucket list if I don't make this one. It's a Hatch Chili cocktail competition.
Well, yeah, I mean, Wes over there is, he's awesome. And they opened up their, the first alcohol they drank in that place when they signed the lease and went in to start doing demo was our Sweet Adeline Riesling.
Wow.
Oh, I did not know
because
that.
it was Eddie's house, right?
Yes,
And
right.
Eddie used to carry our Riesling.
I miss Eddie.
I miss Eddie too. Yeah. But they still had some in one of the fridges. So they're like, well, it's the only thing here. So they popped open some Sweet Adeline Riesling, and that's how they toasted the place. Yeah, I'm a big fan of their gin. Mm-hmm. I also keep the.
I don't know if I've tried their gin. I'm going to have to rectify that.
I think I mentioned this to you, but they have a barrel-aged gin right now that is, it's one of the most unique straight spirits I've tasted before because you get the barrel aging that flavor that you might taste in a whiskey, but then you get it with the floral, botanical taste that you would expect in gin. It's very unique.
Ooh, I'll have to try it. Speaking of barrels, you're selling some of your barrels,
Yeah,
right?
I was. We most of them got bought up though. Like we're literally looking out the front door, and there was somebody who was supposed to pick up those 4 barrels and never came by. So there's still some barrels for sale. They're decorative. If any breweries, we had a couple breweries talk to us about collaborations. We will be open for collaborations after harvest because we'll be releasing more barrels, usable barrels. Because all these ones were the ones that leaked, or we had some that had Brettanomyces in them, and so we just got those out of the winery and dumped the wine. If we have a flawed wine, we just get rid of it. Mm-hmm. We don't believe in blending it down or try to hide any of that. So it goes. Once we get permission from the Department of Liquor, the Tax and Trade Bureau, they don't really care what you do with your wine. They just want you to pay your taxes. We usually dump anything that doesn't come out to our quality standards, and it's. Maybe it'd be different if my name weren't on the label.
Sure.
It's like if it were, I don't know. I can't think of it. I'm not really good at thinking of wine names, so
That's a hard job, I would
that's why
think.
most of them are named after the varietals, and we don't have a bunch of cool blends.
Well, you have the rule of 3, which has an interesting
the rule
sibling story.
Rule of 3 was suggested by our parents because it was a joke we didn't know about when we were growing up. I have 2 siblings. My brother John, who's our lead winemaker now, and our sister Catherine, who is a litigator. So she's the scary one. She's got the scary job. Her and her husband live in San Diego, and they actually helped come out and plant the original vines. And Nick, her husband, moved out to help us establish everything for a while. He's a software engineer. Does a lot of really interesting things with computers that I can't understand. Mm-hmm. But the joke was, when we were growing up, was the rule of 3. 2 of us are together, we're perfectly well behaved, but all 3 of us get together and all hell breaks loose.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing with the wine.
And ironically, it's your best seller.
It is. It is the best seller. It is a traditional Rhone blend. Grenache, Syrah, Mourvedre, Chateauneuf de Pape. But in the current vintage, which we're serving, we overcommitted on a contract for selling Mourvedre to another winery. So we decided that we would fulfill our obligations, sell all of our Mourvedre to somebody else, and we added Malbec instead of Mourvedre. So it's still technically a GSM, but it's got Malbec in it. So it's very Bordeaux Rhone, but it tastes delicious. So I would recommend trying. Yeah, you can get it at AJ's and Total Wine, a couple other places.
I picked up a bottle of that when I was up in Cottonwood a couple weekends ago, and finished my tour of Old Town Cottonwood with my girlfriend with a bottle of that.
Nice.
At looking out at the new vineyards for Merkin.
Oh, yeah.
The back of, what is it? The Tavern Hotel. Was looking right at that.
Oh, that's right.
Old Town Cottonwood is just a wonderful place to visit.
Oh, it's great because you can hit a whole bunch of wineries in walking distance of each other and stay there. And there's a number of excellent restaurants. My personal favorite is Merkin's Gnocchi.
I have to agree with
the gnocchi.
that.
No, Chef Chris over there. Oh my gosh. When we were opening up our tasting room, my brother and I did all the renovations ourselves. And in fact, my fiance will be marrying in a month. Very early on in our relationship, she came up for the opening, and we were still removing blue tape from the walls because we had just painted it. And I'm like, babe, we're opening in about an hour. Can you help us take all this tape off real quick? Because we're about to open. And she's like she's got like, a nice cute dress on and everything. And she's like on the floor picking up like blue tape. I'm like, I'm going to marry this woman. I think I'm going to marry
She's a
this
keeper.
woman. Yeah.
The life of a business owner, though, right?
Oh, exactly. And I mean, it's the nice thing about Cottonwood too is there's so much talent, and a lot of that is the college. But I mean, you go up the street to Clarkdale, and you can go to the 4-8 Wine Works.
Yes, I love 4-8 Wine
Yeah,
Works.
and
That's
then
like a must visit for me.
And also Chateau Tumbleweed. Joe Bouchard, he has been around the industry so long, and him and his partners and his wife, and the wine there is, a lot of it's from our grapes. I mean, not a lot. They produce a lot of wine, but they buy a bunch of grapes from us. And there's one experience, I went up there one year, and they had bought Malbec from us. And we had just produced our Malbec. And he's like, hey, would you like to try it? So pulled a barrel sample. I, picked up the Malbec, and I was like, oh, this is great. And then, I tasted it, and I was like, my face just dropped.
Oh,
He's
no.
like, what? He's like,
It's really good.
you jerk. This tastes better than mine, and they're the exact same grapes. I want to have a rematch.
A rematch. I
Rematch of that. But,
The Malbec battle.
the Malbec battle. Yeah. Well, we're picking Malbec next week, so, maybe I'll, try this again later this year or early next year. So,
Well, on that note,
speaking of Malbec,
Yes. So, kind of run us through what your thoughts are on this wine.
well, this is our 18. We had a pretty good bumper year there. This block was producing actually a little heavier than I was surprised with. We used about 25% new oak in this. I really don't use a lot of new oak. Most of it is neutral oak. For those who don't know what that is, it's just a barrel that's been used for 4 to 5 years prior. So, if you were to say make tea, if you use the same tea 4 or 5 times, it's not going to give a lot of color, just a little bit of flavor. Same thing with wine barrels. It's the only spice we use in the industry. It was just literal because that's where you get the vanilla notes and the cinnamon and dill. All that comes from barrels. So we aged this for 9 months. I mean, it's a little, its alcohol is kind of high. I mean, not terribly high, but so it takes a moment. But it's just got that layered plum and cherry, and just a little bit of just that little jammy note that I always catch when I first smell it. I always want to say I get a little black olive on it, but it's like it's so periphery that I get black olive everywhere though. This could just be when I played football in high school, I took too many hits there.
Yeah.
But I like it because the longer it's open, the more it opens. This was opened up a couple hours ago when we opened up the store today.
Okay.
But it just gives you layers.
There's a richness.
Well, there's a richness too. There's smell it again and tell me if you get mint, like peppermint, like the actual herb.
I do get a little, now that you say it. It has that kind of herbaceous.
Yes, and
I get it a lot more so, I would say, than when I smell it. I get it more when I taste it. You get that spiciness to it, especially as it kind of lingers in your mouth. And the other one that stuck out to me was the plum side of it. It's got, like you said, a nice richness to it, but it's not very upfront in flavor. It kind of stays on your palate for a little bit.
And
longer.
it's got a smoother tannin in it, so it coats your teeth, but it's not like. Have you ever had? Yeah, it's not very grippy. I mean, it's like the Central Coast versus Napa, right? I like Central Coast Cabernets because they're more fruit forward. They don't say, "Oh, it's 200% new oak. Real men drink this wine." It's like, all right, man. I'm confident enough in my masculinity. I don't have to prove it to you with the beverages I drink. I can drink a sparkling rosé and still, go climb a mountain.
Crush grapes for 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
I could see why you think this could be the hero grape. And when we say hero grape, that grape that defines a region. For example, like Sauvignon Blanc in New Zealand.
Exactly.
That kind of thing. Because well, first of all, your wine is delicious. I will be buying a bottle of that too. But also, the grape is familiar to people.
It is. And there's... The nice thing about it, especially with Arizona, is I always look for value propositions, right? Somebody were to tell you, oh, there's, your favorite wine is for sale down the street at half price. You're going to go buy it. You get boutique quality wines, and because we're not a nationally known wine region, you get that at an exceptional value. Our prices are not extreme for the quality. And you're getting more and more producers every year. And I would encourage them all to make a Malbec, though I can only sell to so many, so people have to plant more of it. And we have, Deep Sky Vineyards. The Aspensons, they own vineyards in Argentina and make Malbec in Argentina and bring it up. And they grow our Malbec here in Willcox, about a mile from us.
What's it like to try them side by side?
It's like that physics question, about, or the thought experiment where you've got the two twins. One stays on Earth, one travels at the speed of light and comes back. Analogy. And they're started out exactly the same, or should have been, but they're so different and unique. And you can taste the core elements and see how they spun off and created their own things. So it's really interesting, and I recommend people try it. And now I kind of want to do a vertical of.
I was going to say, I think, Luke, we need to do a little more exploring of Malbec with who in charge.
You just let me know when, and I'll make time for it.
During season, not during the summertime, we do a guest list. So I'll bring on 5 or 6 guest wines from other wineries that don't have representation in the region we're at. So it's not the same in every tasting room. We actually differ it up. But like here in Scottsdale, I will bring on wines from down south. A lot of Sonoyta wines, a lot of Willcox wines. And some from the Verde Valley as well. Like we do bring on a bunch of Chateau Tumbleweed stuff because it's just easy. Like we'll drop off the grapes, we'll pick up the wine. It works out well. They pick up the grapes. I don't drop the grapes. But I think this becomes something interesting as we go on because there's a lot of contenders. A lot of people have a lot of differing opinions about what could be the grape in the future.
So well, and for someone who's getting more and more into wine, or Arizona wine specifically, even if you don't have the ability to accumulate all of those different wines, if you just stop in here and you have the glass I was drinking before, the Cabernet, and you put it up to this, it's a totally different experience. And I think that's one of the best ways to not only develop your palate, but also learn about what the different wines are, because I would say the thing I notice most is the smoothness of this and the tannins in this, as opposed to the Cab was a lot more punchy and I think a bit more fruit forward, but you obviously get the fruit taste from both of them. And for me, as I'm developing a knowledge of what the different blends are and different grapes and things like that, it doesn't really get a better opportunity than to taste it like that.
Well, and you can go here and you can walk down the street, and Scottsdale's unique in the Phoenix area right now because it has all these tasting rooms. Because go up the street, Salvatore, then around the street, Merkin, Lawrence Dunham Vineyard. You're going to have Arizona Stronghold opening up down the street.
Okay.
You've got Aridus down south of us, and then you've got Sauvino. So you've got all these opportunities. And that, by the way, that Arizona Stronghold is opening up within sight of me. So
Wow.
it's going to be a little rivalry.
Yeah.
Although I'm friends with all of them, so
Have them join in on the Malbec competition.
I think they should. They're getting some of it as well from us this year, and their vineyard in Willcox it's been around for a very long time, and they've got, it's not going to matter to anybody else, amazing water pressure. They can water out the whole vineyard, which is a pretty
You
big
sound a little envious.
Yeah.
I have 2 wells, and one of them is a solar well, very green. It doesn't put out enough pressure. Like I'm gonna have to double the number of solar cells, or there's a gas line not too far, and I might just go with a gas powered well. It is, natural gas, so it's, it'll be
It's
clean.
okay, everybody.
Well, that's another thing, is that grapes, especially in Arizona, are very sustainable. Wine grapes, you think, okay, you've got wine. You go, okay, how many gallons does it take to produce a glass of wine? It is one of the most water efficient crops. I mean, the origins of grapes are, the Middle East, and then down into Greece, and then to Italy, and then into Europe and North Africa.
When Gordon Dutt kickstarted the industry here in Sonoyta, one of the reasons was because his papers put forth the sustainability and the amount of water that is used.
Well, we use less than an acre foot. Now, for laymen, that seems, okay, what's an acre foot? Well, it's an acre of land with a foot of water on it over a year. You're like, that's a lot. That's less than single-family homes in the valley.
Really?
So it's less than every other crop we grow in the state. And that includes marijuana, which is now becoming very popular in Willcox.
How is it relative to barley? Because there's an interesting project up in the Verde Valley, Sonagua Malt, that was founded in part, or in collaboration, I don't know exactly how they describe it, but with the Nature Conservancy and Wilderness, Arizona Wilderness actually kind of helped with that project about getting
Buford.
farmers. Yeah, where they converted from farming corn to barley, which then is sold to breweries and other people as well.
I don't know enough about the growing of grains. I'm very, I got a kind of a monoculture going here, so my knowledge disappears rapidly over that. But John Buford over at the Arizona Wilderness, who's a friend, and I really need to go hiking with him, because if you follow his Instagram, for some reason he's able to find the most beautiful places in Arizona.
I think part of it is that him and his dog and Patrick, when Patrick's along for the ride, they are driving 10, 20 miles out into the middle of nowhere, and then backpacking 10, 20 miles out even further, and getting to places where you assume that only a handful of people have ever been before.
I think it's the beards. Beards keep them warm.
That's got to be part of it, right?
Well, I shaved mine like 2 or 3 weeks ago. It was very
Yeah.
it was very short, and because otherwise I just can't pull it off. I start looking like Santa Claus because it grows sideways.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah. Well, it's the Swedish. Carlson. Although I look far more Polish, I guess. I don't know.
I wouldn't have
It's a
been
podcast.
able to.
Nobody
pick it
knows.
apart. Yeah, we do have the video component as well, but your face will probably be so small on the
Wait,
screen.
that camera's on?
Yeah, it is.
Oh, that must be the red blinking light. Not the first time I've made that mistake.
So, circling back to, you were talking about this area being Old Town Scottsdale and how much great stuff it is. It's not just the wine around here. You got Goldwater, one of the state's best beer producers, right around the corner.
Goldwater Brewing. I'm thinking that they were instrumental in opening this tasting room because that's where we drank every night. 'Cause, well, I mean, we did all this renovation by hand ourselves, and you really just need to go sit down and have a beer. And the interesting thing about Old Town Scottsdale right now, and many of the downtowns, like you talked about downtown Gilbert, downtown Chandler, downtown Scottsdale, there's a reinvest in downtown Phoenix itself. There's a reinvestment going on.
Sure.
And that ecosystem of chefs and industry people is very strong here, where there's a lot of support. So, I mean, F&B right down the street. I mean, that if I've had vegetables there I can't pronounce and can't put my fork down because of, you know, it's all walking distance. And that's the, you know, it's that thing, like, you don't get that in the United States as much as we should. You know, you go to Europe and you can walk. You can walk everywhere. And I feel like Arizona's got this counter movement happening where we're trying to create walkable spaces because, you know, living here for so long, you have to drive everywhere. You know, we all drove here. We didn't take public transit.
Yeah.
I mean, we'd love to, but that you can go somewhere and have, you know, that experience. And I mean, there's a baseball stadium right over there, and you can go to spring training and then go have a James Beard, right?
Yep. She won a James Beard
James
Award.
Beard award-winning dinner, and you
with
can
a menu that's full of stuff grown within miles
and
of here.
One of the best local wine lists in the state, because Pavle knows his stuff, and he has his own vineyard.
Person to put an all Arizona wine list on.
Our Chardonnay was on it.
Of course it was.
Well, you said you called it an ecosystem, and I think, you know, community doesn't really capture what the Arizona food and beverage community is. An ecosystem is the perfect example of it, because you mentioned Salt River Fields. I'm sure they have some local beer on tap, but on top of that, they have the Barrels, Bottles, and Brews Festival coming up, where you get brewers from all around the state descending on their property. You can have that, and then go to F&B afterwards, and then hit up Goldwater, and it's a special experience.
Well, it's about the uniqueness of the experience. I mean, if we entered a phase in the United States where you could go to a strip mall and it'll have the same 5 restaurants in it, and it'll be serving the same beer and the same wine and the same liquor, all sourced in the same place, and that was profitable. And so you had this very homogenous experience, and it's like a wrinkle in time. You know, all the balls are bouncing at the same rates, and you know, and I mean, this is Arizona. This is the state of Mavericks. This is, you know, having our own unique food culture. I mean, that is so important to, you know, identity and quality of life, and you know, being able to go and try something and go, this is a native grain. I mean, go down to Kai. Try something that is based off of something that doesn't grow anywhere else in this country, and they don't even know how to pronounce. And that's, you know, I'm always amazed at the new experiences that can happen, and I try to go seek out those experiences, and they still occur. I mean, maybe I'm just waxing poetic because I'm on my second glass of wine.
That's what makes Arizona so unique.
Absolutely.
And I feel like you really captured the whole spirit of why it's so unique.
I think so, and I think, you know, it was very interesting for me, and I'm sure you as well, Christina, to get your perspective on Arizona for someone who is not only obviously heavily involved now in Arizona wine, but developed a perspective of wine through the lens of Arizona, like we touched on earlier. And are you a native of Arizona?
I am not, though I have a very long connection from it. I actually, my father is a Marine Corps fighter pilot.
Okay.
So we moved around a little bit, and because he's originally from Illinois and Chicago, and my mother is first generation American. Her her mother and father were Polish, are in the past since, but they were both disrupted by World War II, concentration camps, gulags, immigration and refugee status in Iran, Qatar, and eventually Mexico, and then entered into the United States through Arizona. I mean, my grandfather came through Ellis Island. My grandfather lived here as an engineer in Nogales. My father was stationed here at Yuma. My grandparents lived here when they retired. And it's just natural that I ended up coming out here for college. And I mean, my uncle is a highway patrolman somewhere around here. So be careful. It's not Carlson, so you won't know who he is. It was coming out here was a bit like coming cold, because we used to, even though I grew up in San Diego, we used to come out here to vacation, which is kind of the inverse of what happens in this state.
Typically.
And I ended up studying aerospace engineering here, and ended up with a degree in political science from the other major university.
And then you started trading stocks.
And I started trading stocks. Oh, I also worked in, I did intern for both Democrats and Republicans.
Right?
Really?
Congressman and the Attorney General.
I learned all this when I interviewed him from the book. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, he's
The
taking
Arizona Wine Book. Check it out. Get your copy at
Yes.
rightonruby.com, I believe, right?
And we're...
Thank you, Luke.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, found wine. I mean, it's a bit like finding religion. I mean, I'm Catholic, so wine's kind of part of our religion.
Yeah. So it's been, it was many years in the making, well before you started having those glasses of wine and talking about them. It was when you were a kid.
I think it was. I mean...
And I love that he approached his family, and they are all like, you know what? We're on board.
Our family had been farming for generations. Nebraska, Minnesota, Illinois, back into Poland. I mean now Belarus, the border moved. So I mean, I have cousins out there who still are on the family farm after it was, it was restored to them after a long time. And there is something about farming, and I'm glad that I came to it earlier in my life. 27, it's a lot easier to work on a farm and build something than it is when you're 57.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people come to the wine industry as a second career, and they do great things, but it's a lot of work. It's a lot of physical work, and more so than I think is fully. Think about gardening on an industrial scale.
Yeah.
Because we can do a lot of things with the tractor. In fact, we mechanically harvest now, which is an incredible leap forward for us from hand harvesting. I mean, it's think about a grape combine. So it shakes the vines, and the fruit quality is so much better than it was 10, 20 years ago. I mean, when I started in this industry, mechanical grape harvesting, you ended up with a grape soup. And now you end up with all these little perfect berries.
Wow.
That you can crush at your leisure. And I mean, 80% of Bordeaux is machine harvested to let you know where the quality levels are. And I just see Arizona continuing to grow, and I think it's going to be really interesting over the next 5 years to see where we're at. I don't think it's going to be a recognizable industry. I mean, the industry 5 years ago
I was going to say the leaps and bounds that we've taken in 5-year increments are what don't you feel other states have done in 20 years?
Interesting.
20 years. And we can grow Vitis vinifera, the traditional wine grapes that people listening to this can name. What we call the European wine grapes. The majority of our country gets too cold, so you've got to grow hybrid grapes. So that's grapes that have been blended with our native grapes, which we would make jams and jellies out of. Welch's comes from Vitis lambrusca. So we can grow all the traditional grapes, just like California, Washington, and Oregon, except for the fact that our land's far cheaper. We are less regulated. And even with the drought, we in Willcox, and this is a very controversial thing I'm about to say, we have a lot of water. There are no rivers or streams that leave our valley. We're just surrounded by mountains, so all the water goes into the aquifer.
Okay.
And it is not connected to other aquifers, and it is not in a irrigation non-expansion area. I don't know if I should be saying this. No regulators listen to your podcast, do they?
I hope not.
But
That's going to suck all the fun out of it, isn't
well,
it?
yeah, exactly. Well, it's in Arizona, agriculture is one of those things people don't think about. If you're eating salad during the winter or tomatoes, it's coming from Arizona. Pistachios. Am I saying that right?
Yes, you are.
I'm surrounded by the orchards, and I still say pistachios. Us in California, we grow a huge portion of it. I mean, Golden Rule, they have massive amounts of pistachios, almonds, walnuts. I mean, just it's incredible. Because you don't, like, when people come into Arizona, they're usually in Phoenix and they go, oh, it's concrete and cactuses. Not really. Have you been to the northern part of the state?
Yeah.
We have the largest stands of ponderosa pines in the world.
And I did not know that till you told me that. Isn't that fascinating?
Fly
Yeah,
over
it
the
really
northern
is.
part of the state and it's just to the horizon. So it's also great for hiking.
Yeah.
So.
Well, this was such a pleasure sitting down with you, getting the backstory behind Carlson Creek, and hearing a little bit about your specific wines and whatnot. And in the upcoming issue of A Taste of AZ magazine to be out in the first week of October, Christina, you have a feature on Carlson Creek, so anyone
And he
listening, make
talks a
sure to
little
check
bit more.
that out.
I included in that about his wedding wine that is going to be released. Do you want to share that as a closing?
Yes, please do.
So, about 7 years ago, 8 years, my sister got married, and my brother and I's wedding gift to her was a wine that she could open on her 10th wedding anniversary. We made 2 barrels of it, so that's about 50 cases of wine, and we did it all in magnums, about 300 bottles. And we really liked that, and we actually sell it in the tasting room. It's $250, but it's a double, it's a magnum. So for my wedding, and my fiance, who's sitting behind me, looking at the back of my head, we designed our own wedding wine that we're going to serve at our wedding and release on our wedding day, September 25th. I think that's right. And it's a blend of Cabernet Sauvignon and Malbec. So 50-50, representative of both of us. And we're naming it Odyssey. And it's actually, the picture on the label is us out in Yosemite, highlighted by the night sky.
Oh, wow.
It was the very night that I asked her father's blessing
Oh, I love
to
that.
to marry me.
That is it's a beautiful story, and I'm sure it's going to be a beautiful wine. So anyone listening, make sure to keep an eye out
And
for
it will
that.
be poured in the tasting room.
on that day, and that weekend is when we'll release it. After we get back from our honeymoon, the only way you'll be able to get it is if you're a part of our wine society,
Okay.
or participate in some of our special events. We're only making, I think, 200 cases of it, with that, thank you very much, guys, for coming. I'm sorry it's so loud in here. It's just
I
a
know
normal
both
day.
Luke and I, we love to see somebody being supported by the community like
Yeah.
this.
Well, and it's
When there's this many people around having a good time, that's never a bad thing.
well, the nice thing about the summertime in Arizona at the wine tasting rooms is most of these people are locals. You get into season, and I mean, it's really fun. No, don't get me wrong. We have a lot of out-of-towners who love coming to the tasting rooms and enjoying it. Right now, you kind of get the people who are repeat customers. Like I walked in this morning and, shaking hands all around. Seeing people that have been wine society members for 10 years sitting at tables and enjoying a glass of wine.
It doesn't get much better than that as a business owner, right? To have someone come in that long as a customer.
Yeah, that's kind of worth their weight in gold. But they're
Absolutely.
also great because they come down to the winery and we value their input. When we have new wines, we release it to them first and say, "What's your opinion?" Because they're the ones they've learned to be honest with us. They don't pull punches on it. So.
Well, awesome. Well, thanks again so much. It was such a blast hearing your story, and I'm sure Christina and I both will be back in here sometime very soon.
I'll be here on the weekend of September 25th trying Odyssey.
Exactly. Awesome. Thank you both.
Appreciate it.